Welcome to another edition of the show with no name, Take Two. I'm Bob Going with Jim DeKosh and Gavin Murdoch. We just did a 40-minute program before I realized the microphones were off, and it was terrific. You'll never see anything like it again.
That's right.
It was probably the best program we ever did. Absolutely.
Award-winning show.
Oh my God.
So you got a Peabody out of it.
And now she's gone. You know, Barbara Streisand came in, sang a couple of songs with me. It was just.
Hey, the best part of the convention was the guy singing the national anthem last night.
Oh, I missed that. Yeah.
He's somebody famous too. He was just an absolutely wonderful voice, and he sang the song. He didn't interpret the song. He didn't add to the song. He just sang it.
Did he get booed or not?
No.
Okay.
No. They showed him in
I guess Gabby Gifford's doing the Pledge of Allegiance was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
It is amazing, absolutely amazing how the human body can recover from such a thing. Here's a shot in the head.
Yeah.
You know, and what was that? 2 years ago? It wasn't.
No, a year and a half.
Yeah. Was it only a year and a half, or was it 2.5 years
like
ago? Well, whatever. Whatever. The fact that she was able to come out and sort of walk, and they had her walking a long distance on her own power, and barely able to move one leg in front of another. But she did it much like Franklin Roosevelt did on December 7th, 1941, where he insisted on walking through the House chamber before taking the podium. It was very similar to that. And obviously her powers of speech are impaired, and they said she practiced that over and over and over, and she kind of fumbled over indivisible, but holy mackerel, that was nice.
The recuperative powers of the human body and the mind.
But, you know, I had a case here. I think I was city court judge at the time. Crazy woman. Went up to Kmart's, bought a .22 rifle, and came back and was going to kill everybody in her family. And she talked about it like she was telling you what she had for breakfast. And she shoots her 12-year-old daughter in the head, point blank, with his .22, in the head. That girl ended up graduating, I think, with her class. If not, she only lost a year of school, which was absolutely astonishing. And everybody would have been dead except she couldn't figure out how the clip worked, and she just loaded them one at a time. And by the time the first one went off, they kind of took it away from her. But anyway, actually, we started out the last show by pointing out that we decided to. Notwithstanding the threatening weather, we decided to hold this show outdoors here today.
Yeah, it's a nice day. Temperature's good.
This show is not going to be anywhere near as good as the last show.
I know it. No.
We were really rolling.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to roll again.
All right, let's change the subject. We'll get back to the Democratic Convention in a minute. Why don't we just change the subject, move along, and then we'll get back to it. Our contributing editor, Robert Von Hassel,
holy cow,
is now the Economic Development Director of the city.
Yeah, and
still city historian.
Is that possible to do? I mean,
yes. Well, if he doesn't take a salary for both, yes.
Yeah, but it's still the position. He still has the position.
Yeah. It is possible.
It is.
Yeah,
okay.
He's correct about that. And thank God, because I'd hate to give him to give up the historian position because he's terrific.
Well, no, that's not the point.
We start off with this is a completely bogus position, completely unnecessary, a total waste of taxpayers' money. That having been said, I can't think of a better guy for the job.
No, and I think if he can do half of what he's going to do in his new job that he did for the job of city historian, I think it could be a very positive thing for the community.
It could very well be. It could very well be. Because he is a talented guy.
Absolutely.
And the enthusiasm he puts into everything he does is almost catchy. You know?
And I don't know for a fact, but I would presume he was at the meeting they had yesterday over at La Cucina with the developers that came in to look at the Chalmers property, and
I would hope
see what
so.
they could add to the city of Amsterdam. And
now, just the other day, I posted on the Hal site on Facebook a photograph from 1922 that I had in my collection of what became the Breton Industries building. It was then the
that was a pre-rubble picture,
it
right?
was then the Gardner something underwear company.
Okay.
And then this morning I picked up the paper and see that it fell down.
A good portion of it did.
It's twice as big. The opening is twice as big as it was 2 weeks ago when they first saw it.
Discovered it. Yeah.
Because I went down
Now,
there the first time.
I guess it's on the Irish American Club side, on the Owen Street side.
Yes, it is. Back side.
And is it in the area of the loading dock? Is that where?
It's to the south of the loading dock.
Yeah, the right side of the road.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Looking at the building.
Yeah.
And it's.
I almost think that part of the building has been rebuilt and reinforced over the years. It seemed to me that was
then.
that was a little different from
the part that's coming down. You can see the first floor of the building is exposed.
Oh, so it's up above the loading dock level?
Yes.
The hole?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's not a pretty sight.
No.
And now this building did not belong to the city originally, I don't think.
No.
The Chinese group,
they have it.
Own it, but they did not. I'm pretty sure they did not buy it from the city. I think they bought it from Breton. The city. I don't think the city ever owned that piece. But now it looks like the city's going to get stuck with the cleanup, and there's no reason for that. And you'll recall that this was the group that was going to invest $1 billion in the city of Amsterdam. But now they say they haven't got. Well, I guess they're not saying anything. They're not cleaning it up, and it doesn't look like they're planning on cleaning it up.
I guess they had an engineering firm come in to look at see what's got to be done and what could be done.
Who did? The Chinese or the city?
The Chinese.
Okay.
They brought an engineering firm from Gloversville. And
it seems to me it ought to be a whole lot less of a deal to shore it up and seal it up than it's going to be to tear it down, because that's a huge building, considering that it's only fallen down on one side.
Yeah. And they did say on the radio this morning it cost $1 million+ to get that taken care of.
Oh, to tear it down, it sure as heck is.
Oh, it costs more than $1 million to tear it down. If they wanted $1 million to tear down the Esquire building.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes you wonder where these figures come from.
Yeah.
It seems like an awfully round figure. Now, Jim, you weren't here for the show last night, but we talked about that. You know how when you were in office, there was a $2.5 million Restore New York grant applied for and approved for the redevelopment of that property. Yeah. What happened to that grant? And has anybody but me asked the question since?
I asked a month or so ago, and they keep reapplying for that loan. And because how it was explained to me, because it's now for a demolition project, they can't get the full amount. They can only get $500,000 or something like that to tear it down. That's what was explained
That
to
is
me.
Total nonsense.
Well, that's what was told me.
Because one of the things you could apply for in a Restore New York grant is exactly that type of thing, to demolish and to redevelop the property.
Well, that's because they had to keep reapplying for it because.
Because by now they've lost the other $2 million. That which is a different story. Yeah. So, I don't think it's because they're tearing it down. It's because they didn't use it as it had been approved in a timely manner. In a timely manner, it's been 5 years.
I was going to say it's been 5 or 6 years, so they had to reapply twice, I think, for the restored loan. And the last time they came.
And of course, they could have at any time applied to make a different project out of it instead of a give it to the developer project. Mm-hmm. It could have been used to tear down $2 million worth of stuff in the city, right?
Yes, it could have.
If they bothered to apply,
they would have had to apply for a variance.
Lord only knows what we've never seen the application, the subsequent application, so we have no idea what they were asking for. My guess is they were, trying to transfer that to Uri Kaufman for the Chalmers at one time, because there was talk about a $2.5 million grant for that, an incredibly similar figure.
Nice round number.
Yeah, but all this big transparent city government we have, we don't know anything about that. Maybe Diane, if Diane Hatzenbuehler, if you're listening, maybe you should foil those applications on the Restore New York grant. So, without revealing a name, what was your general source for that information?
It was out of City Hall.
Was it like an elected official, or?
No, it wasn't elected. It was.
All right. Okay, we don't want to get anybody in trouble. Yeah. All right. Wow.
I was on my way. I was on my way to ask Nick Zabowski about it, and I just mentioned it to somebody else that I was sitting with, and they gave me the story that from their office, what they know.
Now I don't remember. Was Nick involved in that the first time around? I kind of think he wasn't, but he might have been.
He may have gotten involved afterwards.
He might have been involved. But I remember it was Dan Shearer who was
yes,
who was promoting that project.
Right.
Now one of the tricky things about it is the only thing that is owned is the footprint of the building.
Right.
All the land around it, right up to the walls, is owned by Noteworthy.
No,
Yeah.
I thought they owned the driveway on the one side.
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. Maybe on the back side, but I don't think so.
I don't know.
Oh, when I say the back side, I mean the Mahasco side.
No. Now you mentioned Noteworthy. How's the transition into the building for the museum going?
Well, it's one of those financial things. There's a grant application out that we should hear from in about 2 weeks, and there have been a couple of mortgage applications put out. So those are all kind of in limbo. I'm sure it's going to happen. It's just a matter of how it's going to happen. Yeah. But we built into the purchase offer all those contingencies and the time limits. So I'm sure it's going to happen. And there are a lot of people. There's a number of tenants there already, and there are other people who are interested in tenancies there, which will help go a long ways. If we have to get a mortgage on the property, the income will pay for it. The tricky part is really that we're going to have to pay taxes on the full building for a period of time because that's just the way it works. So the taxable status state determines. I mean, even if we purchased it tomorrow, the school district is probably going to be 1.5 years of taxes, and the county would be like a full year, starting in January. And the city at the minimum until next July.
Is everything in the building now? All the museum?
No. We have had the use of the far right, the electrometric side of the building for a few months that they've been using for a summer program for the kids, and we've got that all cleaned up and such. We have, there's big debate on the board and among the staff as to which exactly parts of the building are going to be used for the museum and which aren't. I have firm opinions which differ from some others, so we're going to...
Well, what an absolute boon to the museum being there, and it's going to be, and along with me, a boon for the
it's going to be terrific, and the room to expand is just wonderful. I think we ought to get different elements of the community together to put some of these different rooms together. I think there ought to be a whole section devoted to just to the history of education in the city. We have a lot of artifacts from the school district in there, and old photographs of the old schools and how they developed and the different plans that went along could be very nice. But I think that maybe somebody from with an interest in the school district should do that. I think Hal should probably be involved to do a room or the hallways or something with putting together a nice display on the history of Amsterdam developing. I think some of the industrial, I think we should have several industrial rooms. I'm looking at an industrial wing. And what I would like to see is each of the old companies tell their own stories. In other words, get in touch with somebody from Mohawk Carpets, from Bigelow Sanford, and which I guess is now the same company now, but or they who can keep track? They weren't. And and kind of do that, because we have an awful lot of historical artifacts from those buildings on the makings of the carpets and the growth of the city. And of course, you're right in one of the first carpet mills in the city, which makes it all the more interesting. So that, and I think we should have a sports room.
Oh, that's like sure.
And I don't know necessarily who would do that, but we've got all kinds of sports history in the city, and I think that would be a very interesting thing in and of itself.
Just tapping into the resources that exist in the homes in the city that people have from their grandfathers and whatnot could be a wonderful.
We have a lot of old trophies and things that haven't really been displayed over the years, and it's gotten to the point now where the Fabulous Five are historical artifacts themselves.
And stored in different places.
But yeah, I mean,
it'd be wonderful.
The guys who made it to the major leagues in different sports.
Hey, Josh is still hooked on with the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah, my wife asked me about that. Did he make the cut?
I looked at the roster the other day, and he's on the final roster. He made it. Yep.
I hope he's going to be starting on Sunday.
I don't know if he's going to be starting on Sunday, because I know at one point he was third on the depth chart, but he made the team, and
that's great.
Absolutely, particularly since he gave up a job to go and try out.
Is that right?
Yeah, he was going to be. He was a grad assistant at Eastern Kentucky, which isn't far from where my oldest son lives, down in Kentucky, and he was going to be there. And there's some connection there to Jacksonville, which is how he got invited to go to Jacksonville for the tryouts. And here he hooked up to it, and he's a wonderful young man.
Yes, he is.
He's everything that you want to see in a person. He's a good student. He's got great character.
He's got persistence.
Absolutely.
Hard work.
You know how old he is? 29.
Yeah, it's hard to believe. He's between my two boys.
Yeah.
I forgot that.
I mean, and getting hooked up again with the team.
No, he was in Bobby's class. He was in Bobby's class. Yeah.
And he's 29. I was surprised when I saw that. I still think him just coming out of college.
Right.
But he
played for 2 years, been off for 2 years.
He was redshirted for a year in college. We added a year. And then,
that's right too.
Yeah. So he was, he played 4 years there, but he spent 5 years there. He was on the taxi squad for a year with Chicago. He sat around. He played for a year. He was out in Seattle a little bit. So, but he's 29 years old. They have him listed as 4 years experience in the pros. So it'll be interesting to see what happens to him. He's got a good running back in the backfield. That if he gets
what surprises me about that him getting back in at this point is he was kind of let go at a time when the player contract would have meant a huge raise for him if he'd stayed another year.
Absolutely.
Which means, I think, that in coming back in now, he comes in at the higher level.
I believe so.
I hope so.
And he'll be eligible for a pension.
And eligible for a pension now, too, yes.
Yeah. So he's here with the team, and we'll just have to watch the games when Jacksonville's on TV and see if we can find him on the field. What kind of style, what kind of,
let's see, why did I kind of followed Jacksonville for a while. One of the reasons, oddball reasons, I was down in Florida one year with the kids, and we were going over to the Space Center, and we went to Jacksonville, and I had a great fish sandwich with jalapeno peppers on it while the game was on. It was like the greatest fish sandwich I've ever had in my life. It was, the sweat was pouring off of me. Oh, wait a minute. They had Mark Brunell was quarterback at the time, and of course my mother was a Brunelli, so that's as close as my family ever got to playing professional football.
So we're not related to him, though.
I don't think so.
Okay.
No, I think they're probably French. Same name, but different last letter.
Vinny's teammate made the pros also.
Is that right?
Yeah, Nate Eaches, running back for Colgate.
Who do you have?
Kansas City Chiefs.
Chiefs.
He played in one of the pregame warm-ups, and he ran for a touchdown. And it was, I think, his first carry.
Really?
Is that right?
No place to go downhill after that.
Yeah,
then,
right.
Well, you know, you want to start out right.
So he'll be on TV. His team will be on TV Sunday too, I think.
I'll have to watch one.
Fox.
Watch one.
Let's see. I got. I don't know whether it was on Facebook or whether I got an email from the Red Sox. They're on a kick now where they've joined the team to fight cancer. And all things considered, I think I'd put my money on the big C at this point. Holy mackerel! Boy, they're
in dire straits.
Did they finally win another game? Did they win two out of 3 in Seattle, or did they not win?
What, 14 games back?
Oh, they're so far back that it's they can't even see the back.
I don't know if they can barely make 500.
I think if they win everything, they're barely going to make 500. They're that far under 500, I think, Jim.
They got a big series coming up with the Yanks pretty soon. That could determine who wins the. Could determine who even gets into the playoffs.
Where the heck did Baltimore suddenly spurt back from? Of course, they had a great start of the season, but a really mediocre middle.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, there they are, tied for first again, right?
Yeah, they've been right behind the Yankees. The Yankees been losing those games, picking them off.
Well, of course, they beat the Yankees in enough of the games to make up the difference.
Hit 6 home runs last night against the Yankees.
6 home runs.
I saw that in the paper.
Yeah.
Wow.
And Reynolds had another multi-home run game.
Jim, you want some more coffee? Yeah.
You got more?
Sure. Oh. Yeah. Of course, during the first show, which you guys missed.
Your guest isn't coming, I guess.
We went through a lot of coffee as we got wound up.
Yeah.
That's probably what it was the caffeine. Yeah, so let's see. Okay, that about covers baseball. Season's over for me. I don't know, who's leading? I suppose Texas is leading their division?
Texas is in their leading the division. White Sox are leading their division. And Yankees and Baltimore are tied in there. I think the other big surprise is Washington, the Nationals. In the National League, they've got the best record in the National League, and that's going to see whether they can hang on without their ace pitcher.
What happened now?
They shut him down. He's got one more start, and they're shutting him down.
How's Castro
Strasburg
doing?
They're shutting him down for the season or till the playoffs?
Season. But that's what the word is that they determine how many innings. When he reaches that, he's done for the season. Now, in their wildest imagination, did they ever dream that they're going to be in this position? I don't think so. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
All right. See, then this is crazy. I would just say, take the month of September off and never mind your next start.
There's somebody, I think somebody on St. Louis was in the same kind of boat. And what they did, they started off the season having to throw him some relief innings before they put him back in rotation. So he's going to be good all the way through. But the biggest critic of this whole thing is Tommy John. He says, this is absolutely nuts. He said, I went out there after my surgery and I pitched 200 innings for 7 more seasons.
Right.
And he says
if they're in a position, I mean, if they were in the middle of the National League East, I'd say, sure, go ahead, save this guy because he is a treasure.
Yeah.
But they're going to the playoffs. I don't think there's any question about that. No, even if they go on a slide now, they're going to the playoffs.
I believe you're right.
And it would be crazy. It would be it's like MacArthur not being allowed to bomb the bridges. I mean, it's right.
Yeah. They
why would you give up? And I mean, if he's sliding, I mean, if his last couple of starts have been bad, if he clearly isn't delivering, well then okay, shut him down. But that's not my understanding.
No, it's not. And they've been trying to stretch it because he's only been throwing 6 innings the last couple of games, regardless of what the score is. They're trying to take him as long as they can. But they said they are not going to jeopardize his career for the sake of
the first World Series ever
out of the city of Washington. Unbelievable. I was talking to Misha about this last night, and I said, they weren't always the Washington Nationals. He said, well, who were they? I said, well, they used to be the Montreal Expo. But he said, I thought Washington had a team. I said, well, Washington used to have a team.
Right.
Then that team went to Minneapolis and became the Twins.
Then they had another team.
They had another team who left and became
the Texas Rangers.
And I said, there used to be a team in Boston called the Boston Braves. He said, they went to Atlanta. I said, no, they went to Milwaukee.
They went to Milwaukee.
Well, who went to Atlanta? I said, Milwaukee did. He said, well, Milwaukee's got a team. I said, they were. And first they in the American League, then they went to the National League. He said, what?
I still haven't figured that out.
And there used to be a team in Philadelphia called the Philadelphia Athletics.
Yeah.
He said, they went to Oakland. I said, no, they went to Kansas City. I felt like we were doing a Abbott and Costello sketch last night.
And then they went to Seattle, right? Weren't they in Seattle for a year before?
No, the Pilots. Oh, you're right. And the Seattle Pilots went to Milwaukee. They became,
is that?
Yeah, they became. Yeah, they became. Didn't they become?
No, didn't Kansas City Athletics move to Seattle before going to Oakland?
No, they were
for a brief period of time.
I don't think so. I think they were right because Reggie played with the Oakland Athletics, and that was in the late '60s.
Right.
Which is and Maris played with Kansas City at the they were the Athletics back in the late '50s. So no, I don't think Kansas. I think Kansas City went to.
That's why you didn't have the heart to tell him about the St. Louis Browns.
He was laughing too hard when we got down to the ones that we did. He said, "But the Dodgers just be in New York." I said, "Yeah, well, sort of."
Well, sort of.
They were close.
And technically within the corporate boundaries of the city of New York.
Yeah. But he was just scratching his head all these changes that have jumped around in these teams. But you gotta, I say, what can you imagine? The World Series, the Nationals, and the Orioles. I mean,
wow.
They are.
Wow.
You can spit from one stadium to another.
Yeah, practically.
And we watched some of the Baltimore game last night, and he says
that would be the commuter rail series. Eh?
Yeah, and he said the place is filled. They must be all Yankee fans. And I said no, because I explained to him a lot. When the Yankees go down there, they usually get good crowds because it's so close, and people can watch. They can pay for a train ticket down and back, or a bus ticket down and back, and get a good seat down there for less than they can pay for a seat in New York City.
Yeah.
And I said, no, there's probably a lot of Baltimore fans at this time. And then the announcers were saying how it's changed back in the 90s when you had Ripken playing. It was filled every night. Now, for so many years, they've been such a horrendous team. It's been empty, but all of a sudden now it's generating. Everybody loves a winner.
Yeah, and it's I think as a Red Sox fan, it's kind of funny to see these ballparks in other places filled with the fans for my team, but it says terrible things about the city where the team is. Right. That it's like that. We went to a game in Toronto. I did a blog on one of my best blog entries from my first year. First year I had the blog. One of my very first, like the third blog entry, was about going to that game in Toronto. This was in 2005. Okay, this is right after the Red Sox won the World Series. And who were at the time one of the #1 rivals is the Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah.
There were fewer people in that ballpark than had been at any game in Fenway Park in the previous 5 years. Okay, all right. To see the two rivals, and it was like the first game that the Red Sox played them after winning the World Series. And the ticket prices were ridiculous. We paid $16 for what would be field box seats or loge box seats in Fenway Park, and we could have moved up to the field because there were that many empty seats in front of us. We could have gone right down. $16. You could get the cheaper seats in the upper levels for like $3, and that place is empty.
Yeah, it's a big park.
Before the game, we're hanging out outside, and they're selling the program for the night. Whose picture do you think is on the cover?
Joe Carter.
Johnny Damon.
Oh,
Johnny Damon. They've got the Red Sox guy on there, and I walked over to the guy when there was nobody around. And I said, not that I'm complaining, but why you got Damon on the cover of this? He says, It's the only way we can sell any. but half the you know, with the place as empty as it was, more than half the fans were Red Sox fans. Guys, people were flying up from Boston,
and the answer to your question is no. He hasn't played but a game in the last couple of weeks.
Wait, what was the question?
Wells. Is Casper Wells still playing for Seattle? He's still there, but he hasn't.
He hasn't played.
Well, they got the 40-man roster up for one thing.
He only played a game a couple of weeks ago. I saw. You know.
So he didn't beat the Red Sox this time.
No,
like he usually does.
No.
Snotty little kid.
Big boy. And his father went to Finney's College. His Cappy went to Colgate.
Yeah.
So he was a tight end up at Colgate.
Yeah. What an athlete he was. What an all-sport athlete he was.
He was.
Boy.
He was. Yeah. So his brother was a
pretty talented family.
Yeah, absolutely. His dad was a good athlete in the city when he was younger.
Yeah. And as you know, my granddaughter has Wells genes. Her great grandmother was Punky Wells' sister, Mary Patitucci. Cappy's father.
Yes. Sister.
Cappy's father's sister. In other words, Cappy's aunt is my daughter's my granddaughter's great grandmother. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Wow. A lot of connections here in Amsterdam.
And Punky was POW in World War II. He may make the cut of my book. I think he'll. I gotta mention him. What the heck? He's a relative.
There you go.
See, Ralph Gaetano passed away. Ralph Jr.
And
which reminded me that Ralph Sr., I think it was his father, was Ralph Gaetano. Anyway, liberated a POW camp, and one of the guys he threw in his truck was from Amsterdam.
Really?
Yeah. Who knew him? Yeah.
Who knew?
Now, which was interesting because I heard the same story about Sonny Napel. He was driving a truck that liberated a POW camp and got a guy from Amsterdam. I can't figure out who it was yet because the family kind of lost it. Now, the interesting thing is Sue Gaetano is married to Tim Napel. So both their fathers rescue guys from Amsterdam and POW camps. If that was her father, I think it is. And my friend Ed Hassenfuss passed away. Great guy. His brother was the first guy from Amsterdam killed in World War II at Hickam, Hawaii. And Ed was very helpful.
He had the baseball field named after him.
Had the whole park named after him, and then taken away. And about 2 years ago, I met with him, spent several hours with him, and he gave me all kinds of stuff. He gave me a book that told how his brother died, which nobody in Amsterdam had, but one of his friends told the whole story. You know, about where he was, and then they bring him inside, and then he's hurt, and they bring him to the hospital. He dies. Then they lost him. But Ed only asked me to do one thing. He says, I want to tell you the story about my mother and how they tried to take my brother's name off the park.
Well, that was wrong.
They succeeded.
Yeah, they did.
Sort of,
yeah.
People still call it Hassenfuss, but
yeah.
And all they left was that little corner memorial.
Yeah.
Where they still gather on Pearl Harbor Day.
Yeah,
and I see that they had this weekend they've got a motorcycle ride to help money for the Southside Veterans Park.
Oh, good. Good.
They, local bikers are going to get together and do actually it's going to be a walk.
I think they already rode, didn't they?
Was it last weekend? Labor Day weekend?
It seems to me I remember reading something that they already rode.
But they're donating their money to the South Side. So I guess they got quite a bit of work to do on the memorial over there.
That is the gem of the city, that park.
Yeah.
And volunteers come in and mow the lawn and plant the flowers.
Volunteers built it.
And volunteers built it.
And it's the one that's hanging on
kept it
better.
up.
The other ones have all gotten smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
The old timers.
I mean, originally, all 8 wards had memorials that actually listed everybody from the ward who was serving in the war.
Yeah,
Not just the dead, but everybody who served. And the South Side one still does that. But all the others either disappeared or were replaced with lesser monuments.
Yes, they were.
The 4th Ward one used to be in Cozzens Park.
Yes.
And that was taken down when they sold Cozzens Park to build the box plant.
Yep.
And who was it? Carl Krajewski, and I can't think of the other guy who died in the last year or so. The two of them moved the memorial up to the Roman Avenue School property, the 4th Ward Memorial, and built a lovely memorial up there. But unlike the one down in the East End, it didn't have all the names. And of course, the 4th Ward was substantially different by that, over the years. But of the others, I've actually researched this for the book because they had all through, what was it? I think it was 1943. I think they put all those up. Maybe it may have been 42, but I think it was 43. And they had one ceremony after another, all 8 wards. And first ward one was at the Bund Street Firehouse, and the 2nd Ward one was around the corner at the Academy Street School, because those wards were a lot smaller back then.
Yeah.
The old 3rd Ward, where the heck was that? I'm not sure where that one was.
3rd Ward.
3rd Ward would have been half of Reed Hill and downtown. May actually have been, I don't think it was at City Hall, but I'm not sure about that one. The 4th one was down the west, and the 5th Ward is one we were talking about. The 6th Ward, well, I believe, was in front of the firehouse on Division Street. The 7th Ward was up by Battisti's there, is still sort of there. They replaced it. The 8th Ward was up on Lion Street across from Crystal Bar.
Right, and that was substantially bigger.
Yeah, the 7th and 8th Ward, the 7th and 8th Ward ones were almost identical. They had that the archway, and then they had the names of everybody serving, and those stayed up the longest, I think, of the ones that disappeared. And then they were somewhere along the line replaced by kind of generic memorials to everybody who served in all the wars without the names. But if somebody died, they would have a wreath laying ceremony in the neighborhood, and all that stuff. I came across a story from the early 60s. Maybe it was, I'm not sure, it might have been one of Mark Perfetti's pictures from the Recorder, but I found the story anyway. And in the 60s, the old memorial was still up at the Chestnut Street Firehouse, the Bund Street Firehouse. But it had deteriorated, and the wood had all rotted out and such, and they actually kind of rebuilt it at that point. When it disappeared, I don't know. It's hard to believe, but eventually they just fell down and were probably taken away, and nobody even noticed.
I don't remember the memorial at the Bund Street Firehouse.
Yeah, it was there into the 60s.
Right. I was stationed there. I don't remember the memorial.
It was right in front, right on the, I think right on the corner. But I don't really remember it either, and I lived there. So
I can't picture that one.
Yeah. But you go out into the burbs. You go up to West Galway, and the memorial they put up there during World War II is still there, and it kind of expanded into the later wars. Fort Johnson's is still right where it was. Fort Hunter's is still right where it was, with the same names. And I go around there and I find these names of guys that are in my book, the dead. They're still there. So, So it happens, you know, you go, yesterday I was returning a movie over to Fast Track, and I drove over Pratt Place and Bunn Street, and every time I go up that hill and realize that every one of those trees planted there was a memorial for a guy killed in World War II who went to Amsterdam High. And then I see the ones that are cut to the ground, and I see the ones that have disappeared. And of the 88 trees they planted in 1945 and 46, there's probably maybe 20 left, maybe.
Maybe.
There are bunches of them. There's a bunch in front of the building. There's a bunch on either side of the fence going up Brant Place. But where the bulk of them was on Bunn Street.
Yeah.
And somewhere along the line, they just mowed them all down to expand the ball field, the recreation fields on the Lynch side of Bunn Street. And I don't know when it was done, but it was probably done without a thought.
Yep.
And each one of those trees was dedicated to a specific individual.
Yeah.
And I've got the chart. It doesn't have all the names on it, but I got the chart from one of the families where it showed all the trees are numbered, and they show, you know, your son is number 69, and it's over here, and this is your tree, and then there's pictures of family members. I think it was the Caterino family at the dedication of the tree to their
I bet
son
you don't
and
have
brother.
20 people in the city that even know that.
Probably not. I didn't know it. I made sure when I spoke to the 7th graders over there that they knew it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's.
We don't do a good job of remembering.
And getting
that
back
was-
to Ed Hassenfuss. I mentioned on my blog that the last time I saw him was Memorial Day last year, 2011. It had been 70 years since his brother was killed in the war, 1941,
Yeah.
2011. And Ed was still showing up, making sure that people remembered. And he was one of the few.
We don't do a good job of this. It's very, very unfortunate that we don't, because that's some of the fabric that we had in this country that is fraying.
Yep.
And that's a very sad state of affairs for a country and as a society that we don't. There was something in the paper I read yesterday. Some veteran had been down in Washington, D.C., had gone to the Vietnam War Memorial, and then he came to New York for the memorial for 9/11, and he said, what a sad comparison. He says, down in Washington, there's a feeling of solemnness, of remembrance, of respect that is there, and you go up to New York, and it's like a circus. People are all over the place, there's junk all over the place, people are taking pictures, or touristy type of pictures. He says, that doesn't happen down in Washington. And he says, and that's only been 10 years.
Yeah.
And then the memorial hasn't even been there that long.
Right.
That people don't have the respect for people and events.
Yeah. I mean, Washington is like going into a church when you go
Absolutely,
down into
it is. Before we went to
well, not like, you know, Democratic convention goers going into a church, but you know.
No, people going to church.
Yeah.
Before we went to Russia the first time, we spent 3 days in Washington, D.C., and the program took the kids to all the important historical venues in the city. Particularly, we went to Tomb of the Unknown, we went to the Vietnam Memorial, and he said the reason we did that is we want to show the kids that when they go to Russia, every community has places like that. They are solemn, and people do remember, and they do a much better job of being thankful and remembering those people who sacrificed better than we Americans. We have a few places like that here, but they said, and there is 100% right. Every community we went into 20 different communities on our tour of Russia the first year. There was a Tomb of the Unknown, and there was an eternal flame that was stood guard at by the military or by students all the time, 24/7. And he says they remember there. And I used to tell my classes here, I said that's the biggest criticism I have here of our country is that we do not remember, we are not thankful as we should be for what people have done. And Amsterdam is a prime example of these places that have simply been taken over and forgotten. And it says a lot about our society and the direction it's headed in.
I suppose, you know, some of it's we're a much more transient society. I mean, over there, people live in the same places the families lived for 500 years, probably.
Yeah, they probably have.
But still, it's just the fact that you probably couldn't get half the kids to even tell you when World War II took place, even though there are World War II veterans still walking around in their community that they probably bumped into last week.
But while the people are transient, the benefits that we receive here are not. They're transferable.
Yeah.
The same life that you can have in Niskayuna is the same life you can have here. Right. And the people that created that situation for us are the same, whether it's here or Niskayuna or Altamont or wherever it might be. So yeah, maybe that name is not familiar to you, but there is a name there that provided you with what we have.
I didn't know any of the, you and I didn't know any of these people who were killed in World War II. We know some of their relatives, but probably more than half of them we don't even know their relatives, or at least we don't know we know their relatives.
Yeah.
And by God, every one of them deserves to be remembered.
But there's a recognition when we drive by or walk by one of these places to think about that, to think about what they did. You know, when I went to Scotland to see my relatives, we were talking about what Guy did here and what his brothers did over in Scotland for it, you know, and there's a remembrance. You know, people do not cease to exist when they die as long as people remember that they were. And we don't do that here with the people that we should. We don't. And it doesn't matter whether you're a Democrat or Republican. We don't. We don't as a group.
Well, that's a downer.
Yeah.
You know, this is a good place to break this because when we come back on the second hour, we're going to talk about the Democratic Convention in a way like you've never heard before. Unless you were standing out here listening to us do it the first time.
People earlier today.
Unless you can read lips.
It was such a good show. Oh, so 40 minutes we did. 40 minutes we did before we realized the microphones were off. Oh.
Award-winning show. An award-winning show. And
oh, my God. Yeah. All right. So we'll be back shortly with more of the show with no name.